I'm very pleased to say, joined by three MPs to discuss these facts. Andrew Barry from the Conservatives, Ian Murray from Labour and Dave Dugan from the SNP. Andrew Barry, I'll begin with you first. Is the UK going far enough, fast enough on sanctions?
Yeah, look, I think we're all agreed that further sanctions will probably be required. This is the first tranche of a whole package that the UK is intending on imposing on Russia. You know, let's not forget that we are imposing sanctions here on parliamentarians within the Russian Duma, and so they are quite strong in that regard. Lots of people out there will say we haven't gone far enough and fast enough, and I understand that because this is a very emotive situation, a very important situation, a very urgent situation, but we have a whole package that we are waiting to respond, and it's very important that we make the case to Putin that these sanctions will only increase in their strength and in terms of who we are targeting if Putin takes that step and further encroaches into Ukrainian territory.
Ian Murray, so the argument there is that actually there's more in the locker that if it's needed, but we'll see where these go first.
Well, I think you were right in your introduction to say there's a great deal of consensus because Parliament has to be unified, and I think we all are. There is argument about going faster and doing deeper sanctions, and we're disappointed that again we're in a position where we're talking about this now, when in actual fact we've had report after report after report from years gone by. I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee in 2018 when we did a Moscow's Gold report about London being a laundromat for Russian money and Russian dirty money. Nothing's been done about the conclusions to that report from the Foreign Secretary at the time, who's now the Prime Minister. So that's a frustration. What we want to see, Andrew talks about the 351 members of the Duma. I believe the government are waiting on more information what that means. The EU have already sanctioned 351, so the information is there. Just get on and do it. And incredibly disappointed the economic crime bill, which was in the Queen's speech last year. The Prime Minister said at Prime Minister's questions this afternoon he will delay that to the next session. That is the summer or after the summer. That's not good enough. We have to be pushing forward. And as Keir Starmer rightly said, bring the bill next week and we'll all work together to get it through as quickly as possible.
Dave Dugan, in practical terms, what would the SNP like to see the Westminster Parliament do to get the message over to Putin?
Well, it's about the depth and the severity and the pace of the sanctions policy that's been introduced by the government. We welcome that the sanctions are there. They are the tools that we need to unlock and defuse this crisis. But the the Kremlin have known exactly what the West was going to respond with. It's going to be sanctions. And we were told by Liz Truss these were going to be the most far-reaching, broadest, hardest-hitting sanctions. And we've got the most watery excuse for sanctions. 5 banks and 3 individuals that were already under sanction. So Putin will have this level of response baked into his calculations. He's now within sovereign territory of the Ukraine. It is an incursion. It will shortly be an invasion. And I don't understand what Liz Truss and the Prime Minister are waiting for. They need to act. There was crystal clear calls from the opposition benches and from Conservative MPs behind the Prime Minister yesterday during his statement that these sanctions are not nearly challenging enough for Putin and his elite that surround him, many of whom are in this area here in central London.
As part of the plan to crack down on Russia, is it right that a Kremlin-backed television station, RT, should still be allowed to broadcast in this country? And is it right that a former leader, and I stress former leader, of your party is able to earn what some would say is a considerable amount of money broadcasting on that television station?
So the decision over whether or not Russia Today continues to enjoy a licence to broadcast in the United Kingdom is one for Ofcom, which the Prime Minister has made clear. However, nobody is under any illusions about where the money for Russia Today comes from. It's a Kremlin-sponsored news channel, and I don't understand why anybody in clear conscience can broadcast on that platform.
And does that include Alex Salmond?
If he's broadcasting on Russia Today, then it includes Alex Salmond.
Ian Murray, no one wants censorship, but is it right that RT still has a licence in the UK?
It shouldn't, and the Russia report, which was suppressed by the Prime Minister before the last general election, don't forget, said that both Sputnik and RT should not be broadcasting in the UK, and Ofcom should do something about it. Let's not forget that RT and Sputnik opened up offices in Edinburgh before the 2014 independence referendum in Scotland to do just that, to do the bidding for independence on behalf of Alex Salmond and put Russian propaganda straight into the television rooms of Scottish people. It should not have a licence to operate because it's pumping out propaganda that is wrong and is undermining the sovereign state of Ukraine. So it should stop. And Alex Salmond should know better, should do better, and should show an example to us all and stop broadcasting on Kremlin's propaganda channel.
Andrew Barry, I somehow think we are going to get consensus on this point?
Yes, absolutely. As the Prime Minister said, it is a decision for Ofcom as to whether RT can continue to broadcast in this country. That's obviously right. It's not the case in this country that politicians can decide what can and cannot be broadcast, but I'm glad that Ofcom are looking at the situation. I know the Secretary of State for DCMS is in discussions about this. They are a propaganda channel for Putin's government, Putin's regime, and I think Alex Salmond, and indeed anybody of any authority or position in this country, really needs to take a long, hard look at themselves when they are accepting money to appear on a channel that promulgates fake news and undermines the united position of the West in condemning the actions of Putin's Russia.
Going back to the core issue, do you fear that if we are talking in a week's time, there will be Russian troops in the main body of Ukraine?
Yeah, of course, everybody fears that. I think the indications, certainly from what we've heard from the White House and our own intelligence agencies, are not good. We are seeing a massing of Russian troops on the border. Just this morning, we saw further movements towards the Russian border, towards the Ukrainian border of Russian troops. We need to keep the situation under review. I know that's what the Foreign Secretary and the entire government are doing. And in terms of sanctions, there will be a ratcheting up. We will be seeing more members of the Duma sanctioned, I'm absolutely sure of it, and Russian companies in this country.
Briefly, Ian Murray, do you think actually next week we could be dealing with Russian forces near Kiev?
I think so, maybe even before next week, which makes the sanctions regime all the more important to get deeper and faster now. Let's get Russian money out of London, let's get the banks sanctioned, let's get the individuals close to Putin sanctioned, let's really squeeze them, because really the only language that Putin understands is the language of money, and we need to be squeezing the pips of these people who are attached to Putin in this country, getting rid of them, and also getting them out of our politics as well, which is something that I think Andrew would agree with.
Dave Dugan, final question to you. Is the only language that President Putin is going to understand is if we are very, very tough?
Very tough, and they'll be looking with some degree of delight at the paltry nature of the sanctions that have been introduced so far. But let's be really clear, the people of Ukraine do not lack the will to defend their nation. They'll be the people who will engage Russian forces on Ukrainian soil, and it's incumbent, as well as the sanctions coming from the West, that we ensure that the people of Ukraine, having the will, don't lack the means.
Dave Dugan, Ian Murray and Andrew Bowie, thank you very much.